Hi, welcome to The Pursuit of Truth. So, I haven't even edited the last one yet, and I'm making a new one already. I was thinking of sticking it on the end, but I thought, that's already over an hour. Let's put this one as its own thing. And it is just an update of the situation and talking about... the thing is, what these things is, we hear a lot of rhetoric from politicians and leaders, and journalists, and they often sort of, depending on how they've been brought up and what they've been taught, they defend, they have, confirmation bias, either side. And you heard that in the interviews. I'm sure if you put a different, Al Jazeera on, say, you'd have a different swaying. And so it's very difficult to find the truth, because actually what you're hearing is just people's bias, and getting to truth is very difficult. But I find that truth can be found within the people. So, like you heard the Israeli talk about he was ambassador in the last one, talking about how the people, the children were scared and all that kind of thing. That's how you realise what it's about, because that's what you can feel. That's what you would know. Well, you probably never ever felt. I've never ever felt that fear. My wife may have done, because she lived through apartheid. But me, I've never had to, other than the IRA. I remember we were worried about bombs going off because I lived in Portsmouth near the shipyard, but never in the nuclear bomb. I used to worry about the nuclear bomb going off because of the Cold War, but never the actual, in your streets, hearing gunfire, people screaming, people going into the houses. I'm sure there's videos out there showing this. That's when you realise, at that level, it doesn't matter what the politicians and the leaders and Hamas and Israel and Palestine and UK, US, all those people say, those moments, when you see that people are suffering and in fear, and then you see now you're going to hear from the Gaza side of people living in an intolerable situation where they're rationing food. We're in the 21st century, we're on a planet, this place that we found ourselves upon, that could supply everyone. We know there's starvation and all the poverty, and that's why I talk about the system that we live in being wrong, and these are more examples of that. But that's how you can tell. You listen to the suffering. People are suffering, either side, whether it's because of the Hamas terrorism, whether it's because of Israel acting revenge. Innocent people, even just people in general, are suffering and being murdered, and their blood, their one existence, their one life is being wasted because we can't get along with each other on this place that we found ourselves freely upon, with everything on it. How lucky. We should all be so lucky that we've forgotten, because we don't teach it anymore. We just teach all the man-made construct and the system we live in. We don't teach the fact that we don't know why we're here. We don't know how this all came about, the Big Bang and all that kind of stuff, and God and creation, etc. We found ourselves so luckily on this place to be able to experience life, not like an animal, like a human being, to be able to communicate, to be able to express, to all these beautiful things that we can do. Every bit of food, all this technology that we can create, all these things, these places that we can go, all these different peoples we could be friends with. And we choose to live like this. Anyway, so first thing is a bit about the government, obviously backing Israel after their Cobra meeting. And then it's a lady talking about how it's like to live in Gaza.
Today, during a visit, saying that the UK can provide all that Israel needs, diplomatic and militarily. He's in close dialogue with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and says that the UK stands steadfast with Israel. Now, the Gaza Strip is a narrow enclave between Israel, Egypt, and the Mediterranean Sea. It's 25 miles long and just 6 miles wide. It is one of the most densely populated areas of the world, with more than 2 million people living there. Gaza City is the largest and most populous city, home to more than 700,000 people. Well, today, the Israeli Defense Minister imposed a complete siege on the region, a region that's been blockaded for the past 16 years. Let's bring in Shayna Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council. Shayna, thank you very much for making the time to speak to us today. I imagine that your organisation is very busy right now. What's the situation currently, as you understand it, in Gaza?
Yes, thank you for having me on. So I've been in touch throughout the day and over the weekend with colleagues on the ground in Gaza. The situation is just unspeakable. You know, the nights are impossible to live through. Our colleagues who have young children say that they can't get any relief. That's when they're most terrified. And then in the mornings, they leave their homes to get supplies and see and take account of the level of destruction. My understanding is that there's rationing of essential food supplies, limitations on the amount of bread that people can buy. Food is in short supply alongside, of course, fuel. As you mentioned, Israel has cut electricity to the Gaza Strip, so there's only about 4 hours of electricity per day. And in general, just the situation is extremely dire. We have not been able to operate. Our staff has been told to shelter at home or wherever it is safe. All 51 of our Gaza staff have been accounted for as of 11 this morning. At least 5 have been displaced because their homes were either destroyed or because there was targeting in the areas in which they live.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that your staff are okay, Shana. And you say that they've been displaced. Some 74,000 people apparently have been displaced and have been moved to UN RWA shelters. Is that sort of tallying with, as you understand the situation there, that many people have left their homes in response?
Yeah, so and I see on the bottom of the screen, it's saying 123,000 people have been displaced in Gaza. So around 75,000 are currently sheltering in UN designated safe spaces, schools. Others are likely seeking shelter with family in other parts or friends in other parts of Gaza. But that is in line with what we're seeing, that already there's been mass displacement as people just try and flee and get away from the bombardments, which of course is impossible in a place as small and densely populated as the Gaza Strip is.
Shana, of course, after the Hamas attack on Saturday morning, Benjamin Netanyahu promised retribution and told people to leave their homes. We're talking about the 123,000 who've been displaced. When they're told to leave their homes, where are they told to go to?
Well, there was notice sent out by Israeli forces telling Palestinians in Gaza living in certain areas to flee to other areas. One of those places was Gaza City, which that very night, Saturday night, faced tremendous bombardment. And so there really is no safe place for Palestinians in Gaza to flee to. I think that's the question that we're all asking. He's telling them to leave, but there are no humanitarian corridors making it possible for Palestinians in Gaza either to know that their safety will be assured while they're seeking shelter or to seek shelter outside of the Gaza Strip.
Okay, Shana, just hold on for a second there. I want to bring our viewers a little breaking news that's just come in, and the media in Israel are now reporting that the number of people killed in the violence since the Hamas attack on Saturday morning has now risen to 800. That's coming from Israeli media, that those killed has now reached 800 people. And as we were reporting earlier this hour, of course, some 260 people known to have died at that Supernova music festival in the desert. So the death toll continues to rise in Israel and of course, in Gaza too. Shana, thank you very much for just holding on for me a moment there while I brought our viewers the very latest on this. Now, of course, those that have been displaced from Gaza are many of them refugees already displaced. So we talked about the shelters. Do they have the resources that they need to look after the people that they're going to be arriving?
No, Gaza is a place that has been under siege for 16 years. There are limitations in terms of the number of supplies, the amount of food products available inside of Gaza. My understanding is that there's a short supply and it's unclear when exactly supplies may run out, but in no way are humanitarian organizations able to address the needs of the civilian population that I'm sure will continue to grow.
And of course, Hamas is in control of the Gaza Strip, which is part of the ongoing issue there with getting help to those people that live there. What kind of contact do aid groups have with that organization, and what kind of help can come in going forward for the next few days?
I can't speak to the contact that we or other humanitarian organizations have with Hamas. I'm sure, but what is for sure is that there needs to be coordination with Israel, Hamas, and the governing authorities in Gaza, as well as Egypt, to discuss how assistance can be made available to the civilian population living there. Of course, this seems very difficult at this time as we hear that Israel's defense minister declared a full-out siege on Gaza, preventing necessary supplies and essentially collectively punishing the 2.2 million civilians trapped inside of the Gaza Strip.
And that's the danger of this going forward. And I'm glad you mentioned Egypt there, Shayna. In the sort of the days since this attack has happened, what conversations are being had, do you understand, with Egypt about the blockade? Because, of course, it's not just the Israeli blockading Gaza. The Egyptians have been doing it as well for the past 15 years.
Yes, that I cannot tell you exactly what's happening in terms of conversations. I know that as of yesterday, the Rafah crossing was open. There was limited supplies that were brought in through Rafah, and limited people who were able to leave. My understanding is that the Egyptian authorities are charging tremendous exit fees for any Palestinian trying to escape Gaza and enter Egypt.
That is interesting. If you don't mind, I want to stay with that for a minute. So you think the Rafah crossing has opened for some stuff to get in and for some people to get out, but they're being charged a fee to leave?
Yeah, so that happens in ordinary circumstances, not in times of hostilities, that the Egyptian authorities charge Palestinians from Gaza entry fees in order to enter Egypt and leave Rafah. And so my understanding, what I've heard, is that those fees have been increased since the escalation started, and are, for most of Gaza's population, where there's been, even prior to this, a nearly 50% unemployment rate, that just would not be feasible for Palestinians from Gaza to be able to pay those fees.
I mean, that just speaks to sort of the devastating impact that all of this is going to have on the ordinary people living not just in Gaza, but of course in Israel as well.
Not the devastating impact. What that talks about is the greed of humanity, that we've forgotten that we're human beings and that there's always profit to be made. And that's the problem. While money is left in this system, and that's what I talk about a lot on these Pursuits of Truth, money is the problem, and how we've cut up the bits of land and possessed them. But that's what you should have talked about, is money, people making money out of this. Isn't that shocking? It shocks me.
What's your sense of where this goes in the next couple of days and couple of weeks? So this is not going to be a short-run thing. This is going to be for the long term, for the foreseeable.
I think you're right. We are anticipating that this is going to go on for a long time. We are preparing ourselves and our organization to be able to respond as best as we can. In order for us to respond, of course, we need there to be humanitarian corridors and humanitarian pauses to the fighting, so that we and other humanitarian organizations can safely go out and assess the needs and respond to them as much as we can.
Okay. Shayna Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council, thank you for your time, and I wish you the very best in your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're watching Sky News Today, and still to come.
I imagine I don't know, just hearing all the stuff that in the last two Pursuits of Truth, all these different angles, all these different people talking about one event, you know, historically, it just depresses you about humanity. And for me, it's just another example of the way we live, the way we choose to live is not right. It doesn't work for humanity. Having, you know, we don't need to possess bits of land. We don't need paper. This land is all ours freely, everything. Who is it who came up with the idea of cutting it up and saying, this is mine, putting a flag in it, this is mine? It's funny, we all share the moon, don't we? But we can't share the planet that we all live on. I don't know, it's just so depressing, and this is real people's lives that it's affecting, isn't it? It's easy for me to like I said, to be making this, but I can't imagine how it would be to be, say, a child in Israel or Palestine or anywhere where these conflicts take place, or where, you know, in Africa or in places where there's poverty and people are starving, when there's, you know, food for everyone. Everything's here. Like I say in the last one, we've freely found ourselves at this place. Everything's freely for us all. And we've decided that the best way to live that life is possess it all and then charge everyone for what was free, so that we can make money and just, you know, play a game of life with this existence. I don't know. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.